depth to Bubble. A lot of the other tools are kind of more just UI related. But yeah, let's just get started. If anybody else joins us, that's good. But I'll try to move fast, but if you have any questions at all, just let me know. But we'll go through this relatively quickly because there's a lot of stuff we want to get to here. So this is the ultimate SaaS MVP idea generation guide. I put this together and I went through this again today, kind of touched it up, and I think this is everything that you would need to come up with a bunch of ideas. You'd be hard pressed to go through this whole thing and not come up with several good, feasible SaaS ideas. And it's pretty straightforward. So we'll get into this. So like I said, I run Booster Cartel. We do Figma design and bubble development. We're over here in Scottsdale, right in Old Town. And most of our clients are brand new to SaaS. So they're brand new to app development. They're brand new to running a SaaS business. So what this guide is for is somebody who is newer to the app development world, wants to get into SaaS. There's a lot of trends. There's a lot of industry hype around SaaS businesses, and they are very good because they have monthly recurring revenue and can sometimes be pretty low overhead and really profitable. So they're good businesses. But sometimes it's hard to come up with ideas if you don't know where to start. So that's where this guide gets into everything. So I'll skip some of these things. This is me. You can check out our Google reviews if you want. But yeah, in this guide, we'll go through the different frameworks to use to come up with SaaS ideas and any AI, but ChatGPT for sure is a great tool to come up with ideas and to brainstorm and to check feasibility for apps and come up with a good MVP feature list. So we'll do that in this today. So let's get into this. Cool. So the main thing to think about is we can come up with pretty much an unlimited number of ideas using these frameworks, but the ideas that we want to look at and spend time refining are the ones where we have some competitive advantage. So I've done probably about 100 apps or something like that. I'd have to look up how many apps I've done in the last few years. But the ones that end up being successful and the ones that end up having no users are usually doesn't necessarily come down to the idea itself. It comes down to, does this person have some competitive advantage in the industry? Do they already have a network in the industry? Do they already have an audience? Or they don't know anything about the industry, but they have some idea? That's probably not going to end up very well unless you're really, really good at marketing. So coming up with a good idea is easy. We can do that a bunch of times, but we need to identify ideas where we have some competitive advantage. And that looks like having some type of industry knowledge, having an audience, having a network in that industry. So by the way, if you guys have any questions at all, just let me know as we go through these frameworks. By the way, for the new people that joined, you can follow along at that link there, boostercartel.com/idea generation guide. You can follow along, and that way you can copy and paste these prompts into ChatGPT, and then just let me know what ideas you're coming up with, and then I can use those as examples as well. So framework one, identifying pain points. So this is where we're gonna look for things generally in business. You can do it for like your personal life as well, but generally in business, people are gonna be willing to pay more monthly for apps. So that's where I would suggest starting off with is looking for pain points in business. And um, generally, if you're in an office environment or any type of environment, there's going to be very monotonous tasks or tasks that are very difficult, annoying processes. And these are the things that a lot of times we can automate with some type of SaaS. So we can also look at Reddit r/entrepreneur and look up some pain points. There's going to be a lot of stuff on there as well. So if you guys want to follow along with me as well and copy this and just open like Chat GPT or something like that. And let's go through, let's come up with this prompt is going to start interviewing us. And it's going to, before I jump into that, I want to quickly run down the prompt framework. If you guys aren't very familiar with Chat GPT and prompt engineering, we want to assign a role to the GPT. We want to give some context. And then ideally, we want to kind of define the output we want and then give some examples. So that's generally what we want to do to get the best output. And so I made this prompt so it will interview us and basically ask us questions to come up with a response. So you guys can go through that. This first one is the interview style. Most of the other ones are not interview style. So this one maybe could take a little bit of time to go through. So I'm going to skip that one actually, but this prompt will allow you to identify some pain points, and then once ChatGPT has enough information, it will come up with 10 SaaS ideas with a clear name, one paragraph description for MVP features, one sentence reason on how it will solve my pain point. So that's the first framework. Also, another thing is look at services you already pay for, like virtual assistants or consultants, and see if we can create some software that can replace those tasks. A skill stack. So this idea is where we're going to have some type of industry insider knowledge or some skills that will allow us to create some SaaS application where we have a competitive advantage in. So I'll actually run through this one because this one's not an interview style framework. So let me start a new track. Give me somebody in the chat here. Give me a few skills that you guys have. They could be completely random skills. But I'll say, for example, one skill I have is Figma design. You guys have any skills? Website development, perfect. Illustrator, perfect. So we'll come up with a bunch of intersecting SQL. And then let's say, so obviously we could add in a lot more. Let's see if there's anything valuable that comes out of this prompt. Can you guys see this, by the way? I don't know how small it is on you guys' screens. Cool. So one other thing I wanted to mention with Chat GPT and coming up with prompts, one easy way to come up with a more valuable response is to add this little piece right here. Think step by step um, through and basically give reasoning and work through the problem step by step. That's how we think through problems. That's how these large language models can come up with a better result. So here are 10 ideas. Visual brand style guide generator, an app where users input basic business info and get a full brand style board, logos, color palettes, typography, and imagery. And it includes an editable Figma style interface for fine tuning. The MVP includes brand generation, a visual editor, and export options. So we got a lot of stuff here. So obviously these are kind of everybody's skills. So when these skills are yours, you'll start seeing what is a more something that you might be more interested in for yourself, and then we'll dive deeper into all of these a little bit later. So that is for the framework skill stack. Also, bonus tip, include hobbies or side interests in your skill list. Unique combos often lead to unexpected and valuable ideas. Industry trends. Here are a few pretty helpful little tools that I found over the last couple of years, and one in the last few days, actually. I'll paste these in chat. If you guys are following along, you can click the link, but I'll paste these in chat as well. Continue. So these are like, these will show you trends. And especially if have some insider information on some of these trends, or you can pick up on some of these trends or add some of these trends to a skill that you already have, that can be really helpful for getting a lot of eyes on your SaaS app early on. So both of these links are going to give you a bunch of ideas for different types of apps that have kind of spiked in interest recently. So those should be helpful to come up with a bunch of ideas. So for industry trends, here's the prompt. You are an expert SaaS strategist who analyze industry trends to find new opportunities. Think step by step through how the rise of whatever industry trend requires a new SaaS solution. And you can start combining the frameworks with industry trends and the skill stacks that you've identified as well. I won't go through all of these because I don't want to keep you guys here all night. There's a lot of extra stuff that I added just today. But network leverage, here's, I'd say, probably the most valuable framework is if you have already some audience, and I'll just start with an example. Millivate is a job placement board for veterans coming out of the military, and they're trying to bring those military skills that they've acquired and bring those into the corporate world, into the civilian world. Millivate, they already had a consulting agency for this. So they basically built an app around that network they already had of companies looking to hire, and of those military members coming out of the military as well. So that is the network leverage. One way to do that, if you don't immediately have a network that comes to mind, Obviously, if you're in an office environment, that's a really good network. Or if you run a business, that's obviously a good network. You have an audience, obviously good networks. But one tool that you could use is if you have LinkedIn, go to LinkedIn, go to your network page, and that on that network page, it tells you all of your connections that you have. And then under each connection, it shows their job title that they have. And so you could copy and paste that whole page and put that into this prompt, and AI will help you identify the app, 5 app ideas that can directly address problems that these people might have in your network. So I'd say if you're able to find a app in this framework, this is generally where I think you'd have the best success. But obviously, if you have some new trend and some skill stack that's very, very unique, that obviously is helpful as well. But the main thing that I see people struggle with, even after they build their first app, is just getting users on the platform. So if you can identify that user base already, through the clients you already have or through colleagues or whatever, that is going to be very, very useful for you. So this prompt will help you identify friction points for the people that are in your network. So go to LinkedIn and copy and paste that. I don't use LinkedIn very often, but the last job, like last office job I had like 10 years ago, I briefly worked in a for a recruiting company. So any people that I have on LinkedIn are directly related to recruiting. So I put this in, and one of the ideas that were generated was a talent flow tracker, which is a streamlined recruitment dashboard that consolidates candidate sourcing, interview scheduling. This is something that I get asked about regularly. That's also the other thing, cool thing about being in this business is you see what are the new platforms that people are wanting to build, what's the new industry trend. So it's really cool to see a lot of those things. And a recruitment dashboard is one thing that I see people wanting to build very regularly. And then the fifth framework is regulatory shifts. Um, One thing that I get probably once a month or so is in Australia, they're, I'm not sure if it's like 100% regulated by the government, but I think it's like one a best practice that companies of pretty much any size track their carbon emissions uh, for their business and estimate their carbon emissions. And there's a lot of tools that will allow you to do that. But um, that is something that people are building all the time, trying to be that first mover, trying to get that share of the market. And if there are any new regulations or even any general regulations that you know about within your industry. Another example I'll give you, I had a call maybe 3, 4 weeks ago with a potential client in um, Alaska, and he's in the real estate industry, and one common thing that realtors need to track is their miles that they put on their car, that are, maybe they have one car that they use for their personal life and for business, and they need to just track the miles for business, as well as other expenses for staging or whatever they're doing, photography, whatever expenses they have. And just a simple tool to track those things It's a little regulation, just making taxes all that easier. Simple things like that can be super useful. So this prompt will allow you to find some quality SaaS idea in the regulatory and compliance industries. So were you guys able to follow along and get any ideas generated so far? If so, I'll use that as an example when building out the MVP feature list, or I can just use one of the examples here as well. EU Accessibilities Act is, I'm not familiar with that. What is that? What is that in regards to? Mandates that products and services sold and be accessible to people with disabilities. This includes digital products like websites and apps, as well as physical products like consumer electronics. Cool. Yeah, that'll be interesting. Let's see. Let's actually paste that in here. Um, we'll go through in just a second. I'll go through and make an MVP feature list for that. Let me talk quickly about checking for feasibility. So the platform we use to build our Bubble web apps and mobile apps is bubble.io. And this is a no-code platform that allows us to build MVPs pretty quickly. So we want to make sure that it's a good fit. Generally speaking, things like forms, dashboards, CRMs, even Netflix style clones. There's a lot, most app ideas you can think of are a good fit for Bubble. Things that are tough to do, it can be done, but there's some workarounds that are needed, are like live video streaming is tough just because there's a big bandwidth. Complex 3D environments is tough. So like rendering games is tough. And then mobile apps that need deep access to phone operating system. We do a decent number of mobile apps, but anything that's needs deep access is kind of tough. But we'll get into the exact specifics here. So here is a quick feasibility check with ChatGPT. So let me first start here with this idea. Antonia, thank you for this idea. We'll put this here. Your assessment, blah, 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 blah. Shifts in. We'll just put that in there. I think it should have enough context to come up with some good ideas for the EU Accessibility Act. Let's see if there's no-code SaaS tool that scans websites and mobile apps for compliance with WCAG, provides automated reports. So that could be a good option. This tool automatically converts PDFs, manuals, contracts, and other business documents into screen reader friendly, accessible formats. Plug and play compliance layer for online stores. adds accessible features to carts, blah, blah, blah. Compliance dashboard, blah, 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 blah. I think we'll use this one. So we'll use this centralized dashboard. Just save this over here. And then we'll plug this into the prompt and see if we'll check for feasibility. So remember when we're building a prompt, and this is just a little bit about prompt engineering again, we're wanting to assign the role, give context, think through it step by step, and what kind of output do we want? This is going to give us the best possible result. So we'll put this in here, that prompt. We'll grab this access logics bubble idea. We'll paste that in there. Let's see what we get. So centralized dashboard definitely can do that. Task checklists, we can do that on Bubble as well. Document uploads, yes. Audit timelines, self-assessment forms, yeah. Downloadable, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So potential limitations, real-time syncing with external compliance regulations would require external API. And we'll get into APIs in just a bit. Yeah, so all core MVP features are technically achievable using Bubble's native features and plugins, blah, blah, blah. And so that's perfect. So this is a feasible idea. Now, let's say we have a competitive advantage in this niche. Now we're starting to stack up that this is starting to become a quality SaaS idea, and we'll help refine this. And then at the end, I'll talk about validating the idea and how we do that. Hard to have a SaaS without an API. So API is just connecting our app that we're making with an external database generally. So external database and external resource that will kind of expand our app's capabilities. So think of like a Stripe API, for example, is one of the most common APIs that we use. Our app natively doesn't support payment processing, but we can use Stripe's API connection to expand our app's capabilities using Stripe. So, and all of Stripe's features. So that is what an API is. An API is just expanding the capabilities of our app. So, and we'll get into APIs in a little bit more detail in a bit. Here's just an example. Let me speed up a little bit because we're going to be here all night. Check API availability. Okay, here's yeah, here are the APIs that we were talking about. Actually, I think one thing I missed. I should have used the search with web feature to help us identify the APIs here. So we can just do that again now. So for this limitation, so I'll just say for this potential limitation, are there any publicly available APIs that we can use to solve this issue? So we'll search the web with ChatGPT. So yes, there are some publicly available APIs. And then it's going to give us a link to the documentation. Not sure if I'm going to click that one. But yeah, there's a lot of APIs the way it looks that can solve some of this stuff. I'll just say based on our requirements for this MVP, which API would be the best fit with the bubble API connector? Short answer. Cool. So we could use this Urlex API, provides official structured access to EU's legislation, supports RESTful queries, and is well documented for integration. So perfect. So generally speaking, we can find APIs. Sometimes there's some limitations, and it's just good to find that out as soon as possible. So we want to check for APIs. Let's say we weren't able to find any APIs. We can look at Rapid API, which is there's a marketplace for APIs that can be relatively easily integrated with Bubble. And we can search here. Let's see if EU accessibility has anything. I'm not sure if it will. Yeah. Generally speaking, they're going to have stuff that's a little bit more common, like let's say we needed some type of, yeah, we can see things like here, Zillow API, Facebook scraper, Facebook real-time, Twitter API, blah, blah, blah. It's generally some of this more common stuff. If we're not able to find it here and ChatGPT is not able to find it with that search function, we're probably not going to be able to do it. So it's just better to find out those types of things and say, hey, maybe we can build one part of that app, and then that feature that we're wanting, we just have to build in a different direction. So let's say we have identified all of the APIs that we can use, and there's still some other features that we need to have. Let's go to the Bubbles plugins marketplace, and there's free and paid plugins here. Generally speaking, it is pretty cheap. Even the paid ones are not very expensive. They're like $5 a month or $50 to buy at one time. So here's where we can find a few pre-built plugins that can be useful. So things like charts, yeah, file downloader. Intercom's a very common one that we use. But yeah, a lot of stuff is there. So if you hit any blockers, like there's something that we cannot do is not feasible on Bubble, we can either, yeah, simplify, defer, or just change directions, go with, we should be able to come up with a ton of ideas with the frameworks that we have and with ChatGPT brainstorming, coming up with new ideas. blockers should really not be an issue. We should be able to come up with just about an infinite number of ideas through these different frameworks and with ChatGPT. So let's continue here. So one concept I want to get into before we build out that MVP feature list and that executive summary. Um, One thing that I see all the time with people that are new to building bubble apps or apps in general is they want all of the features they can think of, or like a majority of them, in the first version of the app. And it's just not practical for a lot of reasons. Number one, it takes a lot more time to develop that. It takes a lot more money than people usually realize to build everything, all those things at once. Um, and there's just a bandwidth issue there. If we're building in all these directions, the main core problem that we're solving for doesn't get the attention that it needs. So we want to eliminate as many features as we can. We're not eliminating them from the app forever. We're just saving them to phase two or phase three or phase four or whatever of development. That first version of the app should be as focused as possible for the main feature that we're building for. The main problem that we're solving for, that feature we should focus most of our bandwidth on. So yeah, here's an example. Here's another app I built, adcreative.com. He came to me with a pretty big idea. I mean, it's not huge, but there's just so many steps involved. It's basically a AI at content creation platform. So you create your images, your headlines, your subheadlines, your primary text, all that stuff that you need for Google Ads and Meta Ads, Facebook and Instagram. And then you're able to generate that AI content that meets the criteria for each of those platforms and then push those ad campaigns to the platform. And so the concept is relatively simple, but the API integration and handling all the edge cases for those APIs takes a long time. It takes a lot of time. It takes tons of time going through documentation. So what we did was we started with the AI content creation first in the first version of the app. So we were able to generate those images, refine those images, create the platform itself. We were able to, you know, create the entire dashboard, allow users to create brands, add their products, generate and refine all the copy. And then that was the MVP, launched that. Then in phase two, we were able to build the Meta and Google ad integration and able to push that to those platforms. So if we have some big ideas like that, it's much better to identify what is going to take a lot of development time and save some of those for later and focus on the MVP first. So here we're creating the MVP feature list. So let's do that for this idea that we already have. Okay. You are a senior bubble project manager. Here is a SaaS app idea I want to build. Do not include any unnecessary features or complexity in the MVP version of the app. Give me a brief bullet point list of MVP features that will allow us to go to market quickly and a list of features that we can add in phase two development. I'm just going to change that. Just going to remove this and say, give me a blah, 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 for the um, this idea that access logics, compliance dashboard, and certification tracker. Cool. So we're going to have user account creation, simple dashboard, manual checklist creation, and statuses, document upload and storage, self-assessment form, deadline tracking, compliance statement generator, basic admin panel to manage checklist templates, collaborative user roles, audit history. These are going to be in phase 2. Multi-language support. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, we'll possibly add some of these things in the MVP phase, but let me show you what else we do here. So now that we're starting to craft the general idea of what the MVP feature list will be. The first thing I always do is get a clear picture of what the user roles are going to be in that first version of the app. So let's paste this in. For the app idea described above, list the user roles required to launch. So I also, after playing around with this for a bunch of different app ideas, I did add this at the end. Admin user type can sometimes be saved for phase 2 because we can manage things like Stripe and billing directly in Stripe. Because sometimes it's appropriate to have an admin user type there, and sometimes it's not. So we'll go through and see what they come up with. Cool. So that's perfect. I was afraid that just because I added this, it's going to take that admin user out of there, but it didn't. So that's good. We're going to have a business user, which is the primary user. This is the core user, the small business owner or compliance manager who uses the platform to track and manage their accessibility compliance status. And then it's got a general flow right there. And then internal admin. So Antonia, this is going to be manage default checklist templates, view user data, update platform content manually via bubbles, built-in editor, and database view. Cool. So we'll go on to this next one. Based on the MVP app idea above, we're going to list the required APIs and plugins for the MVP functionality. And we kind of defined these earlier, but whenever we're coming up with the API list and the plugin list, I typically like to turn search on so that it can search for the appropriate APIs and plugins that we need. And then I always do this, do not add anything that's optional. So we'll see what comes in here. And the other thing to note when prompt engineering or just interacting with AI in any way, we don't want to solely rely on the prompts. We want to iterate based on the feedback that we're getting. We want to not just take ChatGPT as gospel. We don't want to rely on ChatGPT's word. We want to verify that these links even exist. So many times I've gone and then the link doesn't even go anywhere. ChatGPT just made up a link. So we want to verify If ChatGPT is giving us features that we know need to be, for example, if it's putting in features that are in phase two, but we know it needs to be in the MVP, obviously we can do that. We can kind of iterate. And that's why we're going step by step through this. It's not just like, hey, here's the idea, write the whole MVP feature list for us, because we kind of need to work through it ourselves as well, make sure we understand it too. And that way the executive summary that we're going to end up at the end here is going to be valuable. So we got the PDF Conjurer plugin, we got SendGrid plugin, we got the Uralex website API. And then one thing I'm thinking now is we probably need Stripe API as well. So I can't remember if it mentioned payment processing as one of the MVP features, but my guess is that you're going to want this to be a paid platform. So yeah, here's like a perfect example where it looks like I don't think it, yeah, it didn't even mention payment, so it completely forgot about a very important thing. So we will need Stripe API integration for the MVP. Since there's just one user type, we will do a um, 1 monthly subscription with a, let's just say, 14-day free trial. So it's one general user type. They're going to have free access for a time, and then we're going to they're going to have a monthly subscription as well. Cool. So now we're going to generate the complete MVP feature list, and we went step by step through that to come up with the general idea, make sure that we have thought of everything, make sure that we have identified the APIs and the plugins that we're going to use, and now we're going to generate the MVP feature list. This is hopefully going to create something valuable. Create an MVP feature list for this bubble app idea. It should be complete and comprehensive. Do not add any unnecessary features or complexity to the MVP. Don't add any optional or unnecessary features. Be as detailed and comprehensive as possible. Every feature should be well defined. Nothing should be vague. Keep the scope focused and specific and as detailed as possible. This is literally the exact prompt I use to generate the MVP feature list for my clients. Cool. So we have user account authentication. We have the subscription management, compliance dashboard, accessibility tracker. And we have the checklist features here with the different statuses, self-assessment form, document uploads, compliance statement generator, and the rest of this stuff. So this looks really good. This would be a really good starting point for an MVP. So this is one thing that I find it especially valuable if you're not familiar with how long things take, how long features take to develop. Identify the top 3 individual features or API integrations that will take the longest development time or troubleshooting. Think through this step by step. I'll try to go fast here to the end so we don't run over time. So yeah, generally speaking, the development time is going to be spent on APIs. So getting the APIs connected, troubleshooting, going through edge cases, handling errors generally takes the longest amount of time. So this is one of our most important features, so we might keep that in there, but and obviously we want this in there as well. But we can look at these top 3 features that are going to take the most time and see, are there any of these features that are not 100% vital for the first version of the app? So this is trimming with the MVP decision tree. So this is going to evaluate whether, okay, so, and it asks these 3 questions for the decision tree. Does this feature directly solve the main problem? Would your first 10 users clearly miss it if it were gone? Is it worth is the value worth the cost of designing and building it now? And so main problem for the API integration, no, the core problem is tracking and managing a business's own accessibility compliance, not monitoring law updates in real time. Would early users miss it? Unlikely. Value to cost? No. So this is a perfect example of something that even if we want to include this eventually, it may not be worth the development time, and we can push this to phase 2 once we already have an existing paying user base. This one is yes for all 3, and we're going to keep that in, and Stripe is yes for all 3. So this is perfect. This is what I find is a great way to identify things that are going to be just, it's going to maybe take up a third of the cost of the MVP, and it's going to add almost no value. It's going to take a third of the development time, third of the cost, and add almost no value to the first users. We don't want those type of features in an MVP. So this helps you identify those types of things. Here's one thing I always like to do is come up with 25 valuable features that we can add to the MVP version of this app in the future phases of development. One thing I'm going to quickly do here, I'm going to say, let's leave the Urlex API integration to phase 2 and keep the PDF and Stripe in the MVP. Just say yes. And so now let's come up with the valuable features that we're going to add to the MVP later. So this starts, especially when you're thinking about getting investors, or even if you're getting like friends to be partners or colleagues to be partners, these future features where we come up with a really solid MVP that's really valuable, solves our main problem, but is pretty lightweight. And then we can start thinking about a bunch of future features that we can add in future phases of development. We can add things like progress analytics dashboard, multi-project support, team collaboration would be huge. That would be really, really valuable for something like this. Folder organization. One thing that potentially we could do is some type of integration with Dropbox or something like that. Zapier integration, Google Calendar sync for deadlines and tasks. reporting and output, and then those regulatory and intelligence and learning and help, usage-based billing. That could make sense as well. So now we have the MVP feature list. We've got our APIs identified. We figured out that it is feasible. We know we can do it on Bubble. We have a tight MVP feature list, and we got those future features that we can develop in phase 2 as well. And now let's build the executive summary. So there's 2 things you're going to want to take from this is the MVP feature list that we've developed, and then the executive summary. So the executive summary is a short executive summary that is what we can give to developers, as well as the MVP feature list. We can give that to potential partners or investors, designers. Those 2 things are what we are going to want to use. So we cover in this, we'll cover the problem, target users, solution, MVP feature list. It's going to be kind of an overview of that. Revenue model, competitive advantage, and call to action. And so this is the prompt we can use to generate that executive summary. App idea. Let's use the idea. Cool. So we identify the problem. Ideally, the executive summary, you want it as short as possible, so it's super clear to people, easy to understand. Hopefully this fits on like 1 or 2 pages PDF. You can put this in Google Docs or something like that. But it's got the solutions overview, MVP feature list, revenue model, competitive advantage that you have. Obviously, if I had input my personal competitive advantage that I had in this industry earlier, then it would give a little bit more detail about what my personal competitive advantage would be. And then a call to action. This call to action is, we're gonna have to change that. Let's see. Call to action would be something like, depending on who you're sending this executive summary, if you're sending it to a developer, if you're sending it to a designer, then it's going to be, your Calendly link or your email or whatever. I built a cost and timeline calculator. If you go here to Booster Cartel MVP calculator, it's kind of a wide range right now, but I'm working on refining that more. But if you want to use that, and then so what have we done? We've come up with a bunch of ideas. There's a lot of frameworks. You can go back to this regularly. New ideas you've come up with, things you've seen on the news, ideas you've seen, apps you've seen on like Twitter or Instagram or TikTok or something like that. Come back. You can use one of those frameworks and you can come up with basically an unlimited number of app ideas. Now we know how to make sure it is feasible. We do the feasibility check. We check for the APIs. We create the MVP feature list. We trim that MVP feature list. We create the executive summary. Now this idea is as refined as we can make it for now. The next step is idea validation. And what is idea validation? It is market research, defining the core problem, building a simple landing page, driving traffic, collecting feedback, measuring interest, and deciding whether you want to move forward yet. This is something I'm in progress of building. I have all these things defined. I just want to make it a little bit better before I release it. But that's something that I'll be putting together and releasing soon as well. So that these two guides can kind of work hand in hand to go take anybody from coming up with somebody that has no experience, coming up with an idea, checking for feasibility, and then validating that idea as much as possible before spending any money or any time on that. And then if you're unsure, we offer a strategy session. So that is the idea generation guide. I'm sure you'll have to go back through and work through these things step by step. Are there any questions that you have, comments, anything that is missing here, anything that you'd like me to go over? Is this information valuable? Yes. Lots of great info. Thanks, Eddie. Eric, any tips on monetization scoping? What do you mean by monetization scoping? Do you mean coming up with ideas for how to monetize the app? Generally, it's going to be monthly subscription. We almost always use Stripe for just monthly subscriptions. If there's going to be some type of like, if it was like an investment marketplace, I've built some of those where we need like Plaid integration, where we can connect bank accounts and do big withdrawals and connections like that. Then you might use like Plaid or some other thing. There's some limitations on Stripe as well. Some things they stay away from, like trading, that type of thing. Do people tend to overprice their ideas? No, I wouldn't really worry too much about monetizing it in the beginning, or at least worry about the specifics of monetizing it. I think like at this step for the idea we had with Antonia's, what did we call it? Access logics. Coming up with a general idea that we're going to charge some monthly subscription would probably be a good enough at this point. And we can obviously check competitors. Like, let's do that right now. Find 3 competitors in this space and give me their general pricing info. So we can get a general idea, but I would save the specifics of pricing until a little bit later. It's not worth that much to think too much about the exact dollar amount we're going to charge right now. So here are some competitors, and they're charging $59 a month, $179. So yeah, and accessibility tracker. So it kind of depends on where we're at in the marketplace. It will kind of, yeah, it'll kind of depend. But yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about the specific amount right now and just get a general idea. If we're doing a lot of API calls, and it's a paid API. So there are some APIs that will charge us per usage, like OpenAI will charge us, but it's a very, very low amount. But let's say it was something more expensive, like a perfect example is like Stripe KYC, Stripe Know Your Customer or ID verification. They charge, I can't remember what it is, but like a few dollars or something like that per ID check. Um, so let that actually isn't a very good example because users are going to be doing that just one time. But let's use generating AI content, AI videos, for example. Let's say we built an app and it generates AI videos, and that costs us a certain amount per 7 seconds or whatever it ends up being. We're going to want to build some credit system where maybe we have a monthly paywall where we charge $9 or $99 or $59 a month, whatever. But we want to limit that usage if we are getting charged a significant amount if somebody uses our app a lot. So that would be a perfect time to make some type of credit system. But again, that wouldn't really be something we need to worry too much about in the MVP. It's going to be pretty unlikely that there's some like mega big user right off the bat. And you can set up some artificial limitations to that before building out a whole credit system. Are there any other questions? If other people can easily develop your app or something similar, does it come down to marketing to compete and succeed? So that's a perfect point, and that's what I see all the time. So I develop apps. That's what I do. I run a bubble development agency. So I see all the time people coming up with app ideas, and the app idea is intrinsically good. I mean, it solves the problem they're trying to solve, but they have no competitive advantage. They've maybe just seen the app somewhere and they want to build something like that. Unless you have some marketing experience, it's going to be very difficult to get those first users. Now, if that's not a big concern for you and you want it to be more of a slow churn and you're going to learn those marketing skills over time, that's fine. But what I've seen people be successful right out the gate is the people that are doing some type of network leverage where they either work in the industry and have a lot of colleagues that would use the app, they have clients that would use the app, they have audience. For example, they have a YouTube audience. I've built apps for people that have a big YouTube audience, and it's just like they have their market there already. They're building for that. That's what I find is where people will be most successful. If you have a good idea, that's good, but we do kind of need to think about how how are we going to get users to use this? There's a billion cool apps out there, cool websites, but if you don't have some competitive advantage in that niche, it's going to be tough. Do you see app developers who fail to fix bugs, keep their apps up to date? Should app builders be behind an LLC? Um, so how we do it at Booster Cartel is we basically give a quote for that MVP feature list, and then we offer 30 days free of bug fixing after it's launched. So there's any bugs that come up within 30 days, we fix those if they're within that original MVP scope. Sometimes then people are wanting to jump right into phase two development. So as we're building phase two, then we're obviously fixing any bugs that come up along the way. Some people also want to learn Bubble as we're building it. So they're kind of learning what we're building as they go, and then they are able to take care of some of those bugs that may come up in the future. Then we also offer a monthly maintenance plan as well. That's completely optional if that was something that our clients wanted to do. So some people want to do that. Some people want to take care of it themselves, or if they wanted to hire somebody else to do it as well, that's possible too. Depends on how complex the app is, if that would be required or not. Should app builders be behind an LLC? I'm not sure. I wouldn't really know. Um, I would say like ask your accountant if they would need to do that. Generally, I see some people do have an LLC, some people don't. Um, I'm not sure. I wouldn't know how to answer that. But yeah, thanks for staying on so long with me. Hopefully that was valuable. Is there any other questions? Hopefully this recorded as well. I actually didn't check if it was recording. Yeah, as far as LLC, I mean, I I don't know. I would say LLCs in Arizona, they're pretty easy to start. They're like $80. Um, so they're if you just like Google how to start an LLC, could be worth it, could not be worth it. I don't know. Yeah, so I'll put together that lead or sorry, idea validation guide in the next. It might take me a while. These surprisingly like doesn't seem that long, but this takes so long to put together. Um, so I'll try to put this together. I have most of the detail done, but like putting it together in like a visually appealing way and making it all coherent takes a long time. So I have all the general ideas. So if you guys have any questions about how to do these things, I already know how to do all of them. I just haven't built the guide yet. Um, and then I'll put this together in the next couple of weeks, and I'll probably do another meetup in a couple weeks. And then if there's anything else that comes up that I can think of, that would be a valuable thing to do. I'll probably do something like this like once a month. Um, there's a few people that are interested, and it just kind of helps me. Obviously, it helps me like put these types of things together, and then all clients for the future are able to have access to this. So even if there's not a ton of people on the call, it doesn't really matter to me, because I know these guides will be valuable to people in the future. And if they want to use our services, then that's good too. So perfect. It was great talking to everybody. If you guys have any questions, hit me up on Meetup, or you can contact me on Booster Cartel as well. Info at Booster Cartel or Alex at boostercartel.com is where you'll find me. So hopefully that was helpful, guys. It was good chatting with you. Hopefully those ideas were helpful. And if you have any questions, just let me know. And I'll talk to you guys in a couple weeks, probably. All right, take care.